In English folklore, the black dog is a demonic entity with unnaturally large red or yellow eyes. Often also referred to as a hellhound, these abnormally large dogs are believed to be an omen of death. Black dogs are commonly seen as sinister or malevolent, but in rarer cases they seem to behave as guardian dogs, guiding and protecting lone travelers at night. By Reddit user Donagran. This is my first ever post. I'm pushing 60 years old now, and I've had a lifetime filled with unexplained experiences. Here is one of them. My partner of 27 years, and I live quite remote. 20 miles to the nearest town. We have very few neighbors, so we know this dog did not belong to any of them. The first time we saw him, he was standing in the crossroads, where we turn right to get to our gate. To the left, lived an elderly couple. We were returning home from town, and it was close to midnight. My partner slowed down, because at first we thought it was a small cow, but when we got closer we saw it was a big black dog with glowing red eyes. Assuming it had been dumped, and being compassionate towards animals, we tried to coax it to come to us, but it trotted off towards the couple's house. The next day we found out that, while we had been in town, the woman that lived there had died. We were so sorry to hear it, and had forgotten about the dog, and made no connection between the two events. A few months later, again we were on our way home, and again we saw the big black dog. I reminded my partner that it had been the same dog we saw before. He was standing at the crossroads again, and again we tried to coax him. He turned and vanished into the shadows, this time towards another couple's home about 1/4 a mile west of us. We were up late that night, and a few hours after we got home, an ambulance came past our place and pulled into the driveway of that house. Another death. Every dog in the area was howling. Not growling, not barking, they were mournful howling. So time went by. Never saw the dog again for at least 2 years. Then one day I was inside washing dishes, my partner was in the basement, and I heard incessant barking outside my door. I went to the door and there was that dog. That big black dog was barking at my door. I tried to talk to him, as you would to any pet, but he turned and walked off. So I returned to my chores, only for him to reappear and bark at my door again. Once again I tried talking to him, only to have him walk off. When he returned the third time I was resolved to just follow him. I laid down my dish towel and stepped outside. I followed him approximately 5 steps and the dog just vanished. Just vanished. As I stood there in shock, my eyes seeking every direction, and my mind going mad wondering how that's even possible. My partner ascended from the basement. I immediately started to explain to him what had happened, but he seemed unfazed and just solemnly told me that his best friend had passed away. Naturally, I was totally speechless. I hugged my partner, and as I did, a revelation in the form of a question flushed through my mind. Is that why the big black dog was barking at our door? Several months later I was watching a program about legends of Scotland and Ireland, and this dog came up. The legendary Black Shuck, the Barghest, or the Grim. He comes in the form of a big black dog with red glowing eyes to announce the death of friends, family and loved ones. He is usually seen standing at crossroads. Sometimes children who were lost in the woods would find their way home, only to tell their parents that a big black dog appeared and led them to safety and then disappeared. So being as how my mother just happens to be Irish and my partner is Irish, if you ask me, the black dog is more than a legend, he is real. And we have never seen him again, not once since that day back in 2002, and nobody we know has died since either. By Reddit user Mecurin. This was back in summer of 2014. Probably just after midnight. I had just gotten out of a showing of that Dawn of the Apes movie and was in the middle of driving 2 friends home. I was the only one with a car at the time. I just dropped one of them off and was heading to the other's house, we'll call him Ted, when I spot something on the side of the road. It looks to me like a very large, black dog, almost like a wolf, but there were no wolves anywhere near my state at that time, laying sprawled out in a somewhat contorted pose, as if it had just been hit by a car and left for dead. Being an animal lover, I pull over to check if the poor thing needs medical attention. Ted, who told me he saw the dog too and wanted to help, puts on my hazards for me and gets out of the car. We walk over together, asking each other what we are going to do and if any veterinarian offices are open this late. As we get within a few yards of the dog, however, we're left in astonishment as the thing disappears right in front of our eyes. Like, it didn't get up and walk away. It just ceased to be. Ted and I stopped in our tracks and tried to figure out where it could have gone. It occurs to us that, in the darkness, we may have mistaken something else for the animal in question. We look around and see a couple of black trash bags nearby, but they aren't the right size or shape to look like a dog from any angle. And besides, I had seen fur. I could tell you clear as day what the thing looked like. It was realer than any nighttime hallucination my imagination had ever presented me before. Pretty soon, we decide to head back to the car. As we get back to the vehicle, we glance over to where the dog was and find that it had returned. Same spot, same pose. At that point, we realize something unreal is going on, and we want no part in it. So we get in the car and speed off. For the rest of the ride, Ted and I decide to drill each other about what we just saw, to make sure we had seen the same animal. After all, maybe we had just seen a hallucination of some sort. Maybe the dog wasn't really there. We went back and forth, each time asking about one small detail of the animal and seeing if the other person saw it the same way. Wolf-sized, again, no wolves in our state. Long, shaggy tail. Tall, pointed ears. Jet black fur except white around the paws. Medium-length fur. Open mouth with tongue hanging out. Every detail corresponded. We had seen the same creature. When I got home, I spent some time searching online to see if anyone else had seen something like this in our area. Turns out something like this had made the local news back in the 70s for attacking livestock. This led to a county-wide hunt, and a cop eventually shot at it, but it got away unscathed. There have been some sporadic sightings ever since, though there isn't any direct proof of its existence, such as photos or DNA. That's my story of how my friend and I saw a local urban legend, and how, to this day, I feel a little uneasy going down that stretch of road. By anonymous 4chan user. Most of my life I have been repeatedly visited by something I can only call a hellhound, but it acts strangely compared to the myths I've found. It started when I was in my teens. I was walking home late one night, I live in a fairly safe town, and saw a fairly large dog. It's not that unheard of. I would see them all the time on my walks, but something about this one was off. First of all, its eyeshine was almost like a flashlight. Second of all, the wind was still, but I could see its hair moving. The part that really put my hair on end was that it was smiling. I don't mean that I'm panting, and it looks I'm smiling. I mean teeth together, corners of the mouth turned up. I kept walking and got home fine, but was creeped out. I wrote it off as nothing. About a week later I was asleep in bed. I have quite a few swords and such on my walls that are all firmly secured. Suddenly I feel a thump next to my head. The chain that secured my Scottish claymore to the wall had snapped and it had fallen tipped first inches from my head. I was freaked out, but once again wrote it off as nothing and moved the claymore to a new place. A few years passed, and I'd all but forgotten about the dog until my first year of college. I went to a college in the middle of nowhere and used to love walking around at night. During one of these walks I saw the exact same dog again, just staring at me and smiling. I tried to approach it, but it ran off before I could get near. The next day I was driving home for winter break and my steering failed. I ended up hitting the center divide going 65. I crawled out of the passenger's door, and somebody called the police for me. When they got there they asked why the paramedics haven't been called. I told them, because I was fine, and they went slack-jawed. I hadn't really looked at the wreck, but according to the cop he'd never seen someone walk away from a wreck like that unhurt.